At the beginning of the year, HBO's Euphoria Season 2 came out, and everywhere I looked the show was being recommended to me. Friends kept begging me to watch it, and the algorithm kept pumping hype into my feed, so I eventually gave in. I can't exactly say it was really my cup of tea, but the show's ubiquity still made me wonder why so many people my age, late 20s, early 30s, were obsessing over a show about troubled teens. Not long after, it dawned on me that nostalgic returns to adolescence, especially attempts that make teen angst appear chic or transgressive, are a long-standing motif in the cultural production of my generation. The current pop culture landscape is littered with revivals of genres and aesthetics that millennials obsessed over as teens, which is unusual because as an aging demographic, we should no longer be the focal point of youth culture. Regardless, the high angst of the troubled teen is a key element in the entertainment intended for newly emerging adult audiences. From Greta Gerwig's 2017 dramedy Ladybird, to Paul Thomas Anderson's 2021 Liquorice Pizza, the feeling of coming of age is now the ultimate consumer fantasy for a generation that is facing a precarious future. It makes plenty of sense that teen angst is the vehicle through which millennial culture is expressing itself. After all, the average millennial has inherited a situation where they will experience slower economic growth upon entering the workforce, and it is likely we will bear these economic scars the rest of our lives, in the form of lower wealth and delayed adult milestones, such as homeownership and marriage. Maturity is now a luxury, and when the process of aging fails to yield satisfaction, accomplishment, and stability, adulting is inevitably approached with skepticism, ironic distance, and humorous detachment. The desire to enjoy things one last time, and to experience feeling carefree before the crushing realities of modern adulthood manifest, is paralleled by a media environment that profits from catering to our unresolved generational angst. This then acts as a powerful incentive for millennial consumers to remain psychologically stuck in adolescence. The escapist fantasies of youth that are currently marketed at adults reflect the psyches of a generation that has been conditioned from a young age to be self-sufficient digital consumers at the center of a personal universe. Our increasingly transient lifestyles, our therapy-brained obsession with identity and the endless prism of the self, and our economic precarity all contribute to the youth-obsessed inertia that we find ourselves trapped in today, and these factors inevitably prolong and exacerbate feelings of angst that are typically associated with teenage development. The angsty tone of the media we rapidly consume reflects that we are currently at the apex of a coming-of-age crisis. Teen angst and media. It is true that millennials have come of age in an economic, social, and political environment that incentivizes delayed maturation and obsession with youth. However, romantic depictions of teen angst have always been a staple of art, entertainment, and have always been a feature of every generation. The Romantic period was the genesis of the kind of literary angst that we see on display in modern teen drama, and the 20th century had figures like James Dean, who embodied the youthful ideals of the period. But nowadays, coming-of-age fiction is less focused on the potential and freedom of youth, but instead lends a commercial sheen to themes like self-destructiveness and aimlessness in order to cultivate a relatable or aspirational appeal with adult audiences. More often than not, teen angst in modern media is usually invoked for the benefit of newly emerging adult audiences, who view these narratives of alienation as reflections of their inner lives. Depictions of adolescence in the 2020s are perpetually suspended in the nostalgia, anxieties, and aspirations of previous generations, and do very little to explore and uncover what coming of age really feels like in the current decade. In fact, in many cases, the lines are blurred between the millennial adults who create the media and the teens that they are depicting. Bo Burnham's 2018 film 8th Grade is an example that follows a teen girl in her awkward phase, navigating social media's pitfalls and struggling with her self-esteem, major themes in Burnham's stand-up comedy routines. Burnham is famous for his distinctly millennial, self-deprecating, self-aware, self comedy style that embodies his generational angst through channeling the troubled teen.
I am an artist, please God forgive me. I am an artist, please don't revere me. I am an artist, please don't respect me. I am an artist, feel free to correct me. A self-centered artist, self-obsessed artist. I am an artist, but I'm just a kid. I'm just a kid, I'm just a kid, and maybe I'll grow out of it.
HBO's Euphoria has made a significant impression on mature audiences for similar reasons, despite being a show that follows the misadventures of several highly sexed school-age students who are coping with incredibly adult issues. The showrunner, 37-year-old Sam Levinson, a millennial in his own right, attempts to portray the gritty struggles faced by modern teens, but ironically showcases the unconscious yearning to remain adolescent that is latent in his own generation. The show is incredibly popular among millennial adults because it is essentially a glamorized reimagination of their teen years that poses the question, what if I could do my teens again at 30? The series showcases themes that are common among both millennials and Gen Z, like self-harm, depression, substance abuse, and internet obsession. But the teens in the cast are portrayed with an almost adult sense of confidence that is at odds with the natural awkwardness one would expect from a high schooler. Euphoria, its hyper-online aesthetics, and the fandom of adult viewers that surrounds it, is now a refuge and cultural space that allows adult viewers to explore feelings of unresolved generational angst while enjoying the feeling of being part of a misunderstood youth culture for one last time. The show is millennials saying, I want to have my teens again. I want to be the main character again. I want to feel euphoric again. I want my pain and suffering to be gilded with the romanticism of teen angst instead of mired in stark adult realities. The struggle of millennial adults to fully come of age and overcome our fascination with teenage angst is mirrored by our collective struggle to fully come of age in real life, as milestones that once signaled adulthood grow abstract. It is easier to wallow in glamorous images of youth, especially now that the troubled teen is the hottest consumable identity. Our fixation on teen nostalgia and angst is born of a nihilistic resignation to the status quo, because the dominant consumer landscape and cultural environment encourages us to prolong adolescence and never actually conquer maturity. Instead, we voyeuristically consume, glamorize trauma, and wallow in our misanthropy. The formative events of adult life that help us grow out of teen nihilism occur when we become part of something that is greater than ourselves. When we see beyond the self through the bonds, burdens, responsibilities, and joys we share with others, we are far less likely to feel aimless, angsty, self-destructive, and self-obsessed. The current social and economic landscape further entrenches feelings of alienation in adults through delaying important milestones and stifling our psychological development. Teen angst is now cultural background noise everywhere you look. Batman is wearing guyliner and listening to grunge in his basement. Aging millennial celebrities are resurrecting early 2000s emo aesthetics to mythologize their BPD unstable romances and invoke the glamour of volatile adolescent love. Our fascination with teenage angst is unending and borders fetishizing. The Personal Fable. Child psychologist David Elkind described a stage of adolescent development called the Personal Fable. This stage occurs when the adolescent conceptualizes themselves as the center of attention and visualizes their internal world as if it were broadcasted to an imaginary audience. The Personal Fable is a form of narrative building about the self that is a first attempt at establishing an identity. But when we form our personal fables as teens, they are often grandiose and insecure because we lack the life experience to have tested our self-conception against the constraints of reality. We mature out of adolescence when our personal fable is tested and we develop a realistic view of ourselves. The adolescent personal fable of millennials has been insulated from reality by the current digital age, because the internal imaginary audience is made real through the opportunities digital life provides us to have the personal fable affirmed by millions of other people. It was much easier for previous generations to outgrow grandiose fantasies, but our digital consumer identities have trapped us in an unfortunate conundrum where the personal fable is constantly reinforced rather than healthily challenged. This condemns the millennial consumer to the fate of perpetually coming of age but never really reaching the milestones of psychological maturity. The immature conceptions we have of ourselves become immortalized. Our viewpoints and aspirations become limited, and our ability to see ourselves and others clearly becomes compromised. The current landscape not only allows us to keep our own personal fable intact, it also allows us to keep our generational fable intact and constantly reflects it back to us in the entertainment we consume to fill our alienated time. We can delay maturity for as long as we want through digital fandoms, popular culture, and internet fixations, and we can remain teenagers forever. But without maturity, the nihilism that is inherent to teen angst only intensifies and never resolves itself. It is much easier to feel nihilistic when you are aimless and have a limited understanding of who you are and what you have to offer the world. Teen angst and nihilism walk hand in hand because teenagers have no life experience and incredibly rigid mindsets about who they think they are and what they believe about the world around them. The process of maturity is about letting go of immature notions about the self and coming to terms with both your limitations and the possibilities that exist before you. The dark and alienated feelings that are part of the process of coming of age should not be the place you pitch your psychological tent. It is something you are supposed to live through, learn, and evolve from. Without milestones of maturity, stagnation sets in, and when that happens, people naturally become more self-destructive and nihilistic. It is no surprise that this generational malady is now reflected back in the popular culture and memes that occupy the fantasies of newly burgeoning adults. We are a generation afflicted with the main character syndrome of the adolescent personal fable. It has been reinforced by digital environments, and now that we are older, we have failed to transcend this bubble of grandiosity. Why bother confronting the task of achieving psychological maturity and overcoming mental stagnation, when you can indulge in a tailor-made consumer culture that stimulates your desire for detachment and escapism? The troubled teen is one of many consumer identities and personas that can be donned and discarded to add a commercial edge to any brand, influencer, or media figure despite their age. The troubled teen is also the perfect mascot for a period of history in which digital self-creation and self-commodification encourages consumers to inhabit their personal fable at the expense of reality. Adult nostalgia has been a feature of every generation, but the cultural and economic environment that millennials inhabit is manifesting a far more pathological form of nostalgia that is presenting itself as a youth-obsessed consumerist culture. We exist in a digital hall of mirrors that is constantly reflecting back a distorted image of the self, a stunted stage of development that gets repackaged as an escapist fantasy. Conclusion. Millennials are facing a difficult predicament, and some of these difficulties are unique to the time period we inhabit, but others are just part of the difficulties and challenges one faces in adulthood. Our collective plight is worsened when we fail to resist the incentive to resign to the emotionally stunted status quo and overdose on escapism. We can't control the state of the world or the historical cards that we have been dealt, but we can control how we choose to approach adulthood in our own lives, And even though it is much more difficult for us to achieve adulthood through material milestones, the aging process still yields many immaterial benefits like wisdom, resilience, emotional intelligence, and patience. We are not entirely powerless if we acknowledge the responsibility we have for our own psychological development and avoid environments, fixations, and cultural fads that stifle it. The mirage of glamorous teen nihilism and angst that surrounds millennial culture is beginning to overshadow the potential we actually have as a generation. It reveals that we are more fixated on what we were, what we lack, and what we fear than what we have the potential to become. We still have the potential to forge a new personal fable, but that process can only begin when we are brave enough to embrace reality. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I'm so sorry that it's a little bit late. It's been a very busy summer for me. A lot of writing going on, some projects in the works. I've been traveling as well, and I've also been moving house in the process too. So this video came from a very visceral place for me because I've been in the process of doing quite a bit of millennial adulting myself. But thank you guys for continuing to support the channel, and if you would like to help continue to support me, you can do so on Patreon, which helps me continue to make videos. And I have quite a few things lined up for the rest of the year that I'm super excited about for the channel as well. So if you'd like to help me out, you can do so on Patreon. Also, if you would like to continue to hear from me on a regular basis, I also have a podcast called Low Society Podcast. You can listen to me weekly. I discuss current events. We also currently have a book club that we're doing, and we're reading Red Book by Carl Jung. So if you want to join our book club and you want to listen to me and my partner Jake chat and talk about current events, you can do so by listening to our podcast. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you again next time with something fresh. Goodbye! I cried tears.